every time I hear about something McFoley's doing, it's just being a better person than the last time. It's like the children's. Yeah. He's like, I went back on WWE to support my children's book author career. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a weird thing to say.
He is a huge fan of Knobles and writes these reviews of it that make it sound like the most. He's like, we rode a train, and then the train let us off in a field, and we saw 3 deer and 2 squirrels standing in the field, and it was the most beautiful sight. And I'm like, what train did you ride at Knobles?
At Knobles.
How
was it Knobles 40 years ago?
Yeah, maybe we can get the McFoley package.
Yeah, McFoley, we will take you to Knobles. You don't pay for tickets. Crucially, you pay for rides. We will have to have a cap on how many rides we can afford to pay for, but we will pay for your rides.
You please take us.
We will record it, and we will try to see if we can see any red-tailed hawks riding any roller coaster.
Yeah, but see, here's the amazing part of audio work, right? Is we don't need to see anything.
That's
we
right.
Don't need
we
to
just talk about it.
We talk about how much electricity AI
You're breaking
wastes.
kayfabe. You're breaking kayfabe.
Come on, get out of here, Tobias. I'm recording my podcast.
In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Katherine Applegate and her husband, Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, produced 54 main series books, several spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult following. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names. But we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on this series, book by book. I'm Miranda.
I'm Eddie.
And I'm Chris.
And we are the Anidorks.
These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
But we're on a plane right now.
It's true, and Jake is dead. He's dead. He's been swatted.
He's dying as a bug, which is the thing
galore.
Jake does a lot.
Are we about to go into chapter 8?
Yes. Who wants to read?
Who wants to read? I can take this one.
Go ahead.
All
right. Here, let me start the timer. Go! Jake has been smooshed on the ceiling of the airplane. He alerts his friends of his urgent status via ThoughtSpeak. Hey, quick status update, guys. I'm dead. Anyway.
Dying lol, hashtag blessed.
Hashtag skull. Yeah, exactly. Explaining that he is burst open and so is stuck to the surface. Is that what you want me to do? Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And is so stuck to the surface.
So stuck.
And he cannot demorph to heal himself because of all the passengers would have their little eyes all over him. I think I might be dying, Jake says. As he drifts in and out of consciousness, the other Animorphs scoop up handfuls of Jake guts.
Actually, that's handfuls o Jake guts.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I only had the off-brand from Sam's Club. We had handfuls of Jake guts, and the clusters were really bloody and gnarly. It was and fly him, pun intended, to the plane's bathroom. There, they finally managed to wake him enough and put enough of his guts back that he is able to demorph. He is human again, surrounded by his friends who are still in Flymorth in an airplane Albatha room. Jake tells us that his first instinct is to murder. Is to
swat them, yeah. As a human,
flies.
his first instinct is to swat at the flies, and he's like freaked out by that because he's just been
I have
swatted.
to say, I don't like apologizing for this murderer who tried to murder our intrepid for Jake. It's like, he's like, you know what? I get it.
Human swat
I'm a murderer
flies.
too. And it's like, Jake, relax. You can hate him. It's okay.
I've never seen a fly on a plane. That's true.
I don't know if I've ever seen a fly. I
I've never
haven't
seen
been
a
on
fly
that
on a
many
plane.
planes.
But I'll tell you what, if I saw a fly on a plane, I'd remember it.
I think I would. I
Genuinely, don't you think you would? You'd be like, that's remarkable.
If I saw it more than once.
Problem on this plane.
If I saw it more than once. If I saw it once, I'd probably be like, eh.
You know that thing about like before they were done building the Titanic, there were already rats living aboard or whatever. It's like with a plane, that's just a little bit different. Like I really hope. I don't want to know. You know what? I don't want to know if there are mice problems.
I actually, come to think of it, what are the cabins pressurized at? Would flies even really do okay at the pressure in the cabin?
A question I have that's not really related to Animorphs.
It's 80% Earth pressure.
What would
I think
when we experience? No, I guess this is already true because it wouldn't be true because we lots of creatures are able to navigate between pressure differences that make our ears pop. I was thinking, would that have more of a detrimental effect on other smaller creatures?
Well, that's sort of what I'm saying. I'm like, do fly wings, I mean, if the air's not thick enough, do fly wings work? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But they work in Denver, so it's probably fine. They work in the Mile High City. It's probably not a problem.
You know?
But you are right that I don't think I've seen a fly on a plane, and I've been on multiple, 14-hour flights.
Yeah.
I guess just 2. But, I feel like I would have noticed because I would have seen it again. You know what I mean? Like, it would have come back. I've been dripped on by air conditioners. Or but
that makes
air
sense.
condensers in planes. Yeah.
That makes sense, though.
But
that's just science.
That made sense.
I don't know what you mean by
it was more concerning to me maybe than if I saw a fly. Because if I saw a fly, I'd be like, oh, a fly got in. But when something dripped on me, my first thought wasn't, that's natural for air condensers to have moisture on them. My first thought was, the plane is breaking.
Yeah, that would be mine, too.
And also, I should get this seat at a discount if it sits under the condenser.
Man, this dog is barking.
I can't hear it.
It's crazy, dude. You're going to hear it when you edit.
I thought you meant your foot hurt. You're talking about
these dogs are barking, man.
These dogs are barking.
That's such a 90s sitcom thing to say. It's like, get mom her foot-soaked tub. These dogs are barking.
Santiago says it for some reason. He goes, my dogs are barking.
Cute.
Well, and where does dogs barking even come from?
That's a good question.
We call feet dogs, I guess. And then these dogs are barking means they're complaining.
I think you're making a couple generous leaps. I think we need to go back to the source. I think we need to read
do we have to do that during our 12
Yeah, maybe we should actually just
I think we should just go. I think we should go back to Animorphs 1.
Yes.
Because I believe the first
Homer.
words after my name is Jake. And after he morphs Homer, he's like, these dogs are barking.
All
right.
Okay,
dogs be barking.
Jake gets his guts brought. Do we think this is a case like the harpoons? Yeah, okay, actually, I hadn't thought about this part. In order to morph again, Visser 3 would not have needed to have those, when he was in that harpoon fish morph in book 12, he would not have had to acquire all of the harpoons that he fired and return them.
So your description is not wholly accurate.
Of what?
His guts were on the outside, but I thought he was still kind of in one.
They do discuss how much of his guts to scoop up, though, because there's a specific line from Marco that really freaks me out. Marco, I think it's Marco, actually. It doesn't get attributed. He says, do we scoop out the guts or what? Do we scoop up the guts or what? And I'm like, I did start thinking about how much of your physical being has to be left for you to demorph.
But when
and I think the answer is probably pretty small. Yeah, I think the answer is pretty small.
Yeah.
So but did the other part of his guts that was still on the ceiling of the thing turn into Jake parts?
Jake drips.
And fall
we
onto
have questioned this before, or did they go back to Z-Space?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we don't have answers. We don't have answers.
If not, where is this portal to Z-Space located?
You know what?
Yeah.
And it's
in your heart,
also,
Eddie.
You're totally right.
It's in your heart.
Kingdom Hearts, yeah.
Yes,
but if you're
Kingdom Hearts is Z-Space. Z-Space is light.
Yeah.
Kingdom Zarts.
My friends are my strength.
Did somebody say the door to Z-Space?
Chris just can't speak over all the Kingdom Hearts references.
It's fine. I don't really follow Pokemon, but the thing is,
stupid.
I was gonna say. You're stupid.
Don't boo me.
We need to replay Kingdom Hearts.
I'm not gonna boo you. Oh my god,
Chris
so
has been
fighting.
booting Eddie from the Zoom call since it started.
I was just thinking, like, I really am feeling less and less confident about them healing their morphs. So it's like, they morph Fly, Fly gets hurt, they morph back, they're fine. But Fly morph is in a billion pieces in Z space. Like, some other thing is happening. Like, there's some kind of, like, regeneration of the thing or something.
But you morph from the DNA, so if you reform the morph every time you demorph in Z space, that could make sense, but it doesn't explain anything about what happens to any matter left behind. Like, we still have zero answers as to any matter left behind. But if when you demorph, you don't put the exact thing you were back in Z space, but instead completely reform the morph based on DNA, it would hold true that you could morph back to human from any shrivel fragment of anything and then remorph the full creature later. But like I said, it still doesn't do anything to account for the mass left behind that you were separated from when you demorphed.
Which we're going to be serving at our restaurant. We're going to have
the Amazon
real alligator
cafe.
meat. We're going to have real rhinoceros, ethical rhinoceros.
Right. I talked about, could you use this as a source of meat?
Yes, way back in book
I talked
one.
about this
Yeah,
so
way
long
back in
ago,
book one.
and the answer is, if, like, would they have to stay in that morph while you eat them? Or when they morphed back, would it still be? I don't know. I'm just asking a question.
Okay. And would you, if you were an Animorph, if you morphed into a cow, took off a big old chunk of your
Marco mass.
Your Marco mass. No, your cow Marco mass.
Oh, your moo mass.
Your moo mass.
Your moo Marco mass.
Your moo mass.
And then morph back to
What'd you call
human.
me?
Would you eat that steak?
Like,
No.
personally?
Yeah.
I mean, actually, probably.
That's
It's
like a
probably
personal
more
ethical question. That's what I'm saying.
It's probably more ethical than if
Because
I
no
eat a
animal
real
had to
steak.
die for it to happen.
But it
so I'm
was
saying
your
it's more
butt,
ethical.
so that you're eating.
I
No,
mean,
it wasn't your butt. We actually were getting to that in a later
rump
chapter about
steak
how this
is probably delicious. I've never had it.
No, but that's my opinion.
I
Chris, it is
cannot
my butt.
believe that we all left an eating ass joke on the table. We all were like, I don't
like,
have
who's
the
gonna go
energy.
for it?
Who's gonna do
I
it?
didn't even think of it. So
That's
You're the one who
biggest
literally
lie
teed it up.
I have ever heard.
A week ago, you were like, "I'm gonna say about a rump steak."
yeah, wrote a sticky note by my bed. Rump steak? Question mark.
What does this mean?
No,
A
I
bunch
know.
of red string connecting like
Man,
parts of an animal.
oh my god.
Okay.
But yeah, all that happens is in this chapter is that they pick up the pieces of Jake and he demorphs in an airplane bathroom.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's a sequel to Chunks of Darlene. Peace.
Oh my
Yeah,
god,
it is.
rump
Jake.
steak.
Yeah, rumps of Jake. No, it's not rumps of Jake. It's got to be flank.
What you gonna do with all that Jake?
all that Jake inside your snakes on a plane?
Chapter 9!
Chapter 9! The plane lands. Jake exits and waits outside the airport bathrooms while his friends demorph. He seems to be having a panic attack. His hands won't stop shaking. He's on the verge of vomiting. Cassie eventually joins him, embracing Jake. She tells him it's okay to be
Joins
scared.
him in having a panic attack.
Yeah, I would. Jake says that he's fine, but when he tries to stand up, his legs give out. Still, Jake does his best to conceal his fear when the rest of the gang shows up. The next step of the plan is to infiltrate the Web Access America office so that the Animorphs could steal the user information from their database. The kids grab lunch from Taco Bell on their way to the office, and then, upon arriving, manage to sneak into a tour of the building that happens to be departing just as they arrive. Jake says that there is no way this tour will go to the command center, their destination for stealing the necessary files. But that is, in fact, the first stop of the tour. Along the way, we are introduced to an important character, Joe Bob Fenestra by name. The founder of Web Access America, the second wealthiest man in the world, and Marco's hero. Okay, first note, it's the WAA building. It is the WAA building, and Waluigi should be their mascot, and I think it is a crime to believe otherwise.
He might not have existed.
That's what I'm wondering.
Because he's Mario Tennis.
Mario
which
Tennis
might
had
not have
absolutely
yet.
come out by 1998. It was an N64 game.
Are you sure it's 98? No. You should look. You should look at the date. You should look at the
Mario
date.
Tennis
98 is when the book came out, so we got that. Mario Tennis.
is a 2000 sports video game. You're
Wow.
right. You're
Yeah,
right. This is older than
yeah.
Waluigi.
Waluigi didn't exist.
Hot damn.
I know.
Just let my
Can you
man
imagine
play
it?
tennis and run an ISP.
He
I know.
existed, but no one knew about him yet. That's what I
That's right.
He was-
Somebody had probably designed him because
Yeah, is it Morimoto?
Wario was a thing.
Is it Morimoto? Is that who designed Mario? Like, I forget.
Miyamoto.
Miyamoto was just like, I can't fucking wait.
I can't fucking wait to drop Waluigi.
I'm gonna drop a long boy.
Oh, the longest boy.
Okay, two things are in this chapter that I don't understand why they're here.
Okay.
The first, the nun. The
Oh,
second,
dude, we gotta
Nun
talk about the
Chronicles
nun.
when?
We gotta talk
Nun
about the
Chronicles when?
nun. Yeah, Nun Chronicles when. Nun Chronicles left beef. It's
No, they
It's
get
like-
they get the directions to the ISP building from a nun.
from a nun
who just
loves
knows.
computers.
They say for some reason she just knows. Like
She
where it
has
is.
a T1 connection to God, baby.
is it Visser 3? Is
That
it
nun?
Eileen?
Oh.
No,
change.
dude.
Did Eileen become a
No.
nun? Is that why we haven't seen her?
Yeah.
No, I think the next time we do karaoke, though, or not karaoke. Oh my God!
What are you talking
Survivor.
about?
The next
Survivor?
time we do Survivor.
Karaoke
on the
Survivor,
show.
very similar.
I guess I'm singing the entire time, but the point is, like, I want Computer Nun to be one of the NPCs.
Wah
He's like my
Nun.
new favorite.
Wah
Nun. Wah Nun. Waluigi.
I also want to say Jake says something. Marco asks how Jake feels, and he says, "I like having my guts inside me as opposed to having them smeared all over." And my response to that is, "Then why did you go to Taco Bell?"
Yes.
Because
This was my second question.
it's just inconsistent.
Why do they go to Taco Bell? I can't figure out why this. There's a couple things here. I mean, it's not just a nun. It's not just Taco Bell. There's this whole kind of background plotline with Rachel obtaining money that I don't know that I'm ever thinking
It is
about.
weird.
She sent it to herself.
They need
She sent it to
shoes.
herself.
What they need is shoes. That's why they need the money.
But then Jake brings it up later where he's like, Cassie knew I didn't have $5 in my pocket. We've never paid this much attention to how much things cost. Like,
Yeah.
So
you're right
the
about
reason they do
it's
it,
like
and I
money in a
mention
D&D
it-
campaign. Like,
I
when you just-
mention it a little bit later that I liked that they were hanging on to this note because there's a moment later that they preserve the shoes
that. Right.
and they do something silly with the shoes saying we don't have enough money to buy more shoes.
Even on top of that, Miranda, they go one step further and they talk about how they're going to get Tobias's shoes later.
Yeah.
Like, they're keeping account of objects as though this was originally supposed to be an Agatha Christie novel
Yeah.
or something like a mystery, a murder mystery.
Which is
like-
really funny because this is kind of like the horse race. The horse race was actually more memorable. I think this whole trip to the WA office is actually
So it's the
super
WA
office.
It's the
super
Eggs Tower and the
forgettable.
WA office.
I just don't think it's not what I remember about the book. I don't know if you two.
No, it's
I don't know
kind
about
of
that.
weird. I
So
remember
there's some stuff in there for us though, as Anidorks, not
Yes.
as Animorph.
Oh, I
As
agree.
Animorph readers, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. There's a lot to eat here.
Yes.
We're gonna.
No,
eat.
there's
Don't
a
you
lot
worry.
of questions. I mean, like, I want to know who's planning the nursing home enrichment, who sent this group of old people to their ISP to find out how it works. Because I promise you, they don't fucking care. Like, they're just here for free lunch or something.
Another thing that comes up is they talk about like sending the Western Union money to
Mm-hmm.
each other, and it just had me on a little kick about like their Telegram service. Did you guys
yeah.
read my notes on that already?
I did, but I would love for you to
Eddie,
share them.
did you read my note? 'Cause
I'm
I wanna
reading it
quiz
right
you.
now.
All right, that's okay. It's okay. Never mind that. But you could send a telegram in these United States as late as 2006.
Mm-hmm.
You could send a freaking telegram.
And you would have. Actually, if you knew
Well, if
about
you-
this when you were 15, you would have, Chris. I know it.
I did know about it. I remember because they were joking a lot about it they joked about it a few times on The Daily Show, which I watched.
Think about telegrams in the pre-cell phone era because they make a certain amount of sense. If you know someone's heading to a city and that they might pick up money at the Western Union or pick up an item that they had sent to the Western Union, and you need to get in touch with them before they have a phone number established in the city.
Right.
Like, a telegram's actually a great way to get in touch with them, provided you know that they're going to go to that place. And Western
don't know,
Union
you
used
know-
to be the type of place you would go first thing when you arrived in a city to get money or get items that you had sent ahead.
It's
or
like an
checked.
Oregon Trail when you go to the general store. That's what it's like.
I love Oregon
It's like-
Trail, so I'm going to yes and that. I don't know why it's like that, though.
No, but it's like this, like you go to the Western Union and they say, you sure took your time getting
Oh my
here."
God, it took you an awfully long time to get here. Maybe you just weren't in a hurry, or maybe you ran into some problems along the trail.
Along the way.
It's what he
Along
used
the
to
trail.
say to me every time because I went very slow so that my people were well rested.
Always,
Wow,
always,
I never
always park
did.
the wagon.
It was only in 3. To be clear, this is a full motion video Oregon Trail. I want to play it on stream sometime, someday, if I can get my hands on it. I only have 2 of the 3 discs.
Can we talk about
But if
the
I
fact
can find the 3rd disc, I will play it.
So the other thing we have to hit is that we have our Bill Gates stand-in for
Joe
the book.
Bob Finestra.
Yeah, which Miranda called this because his name, it loosely translates to Joe Bob Window.
Yep.
And in true Marco fashion, he is all about how rich this guy is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we haven't heard Marco say this name once yet, as far as I'm aware.
Nope.
Right? Have
No,
we?
yeah.
No.
He
So
didn't
we just
exist
turned
until
a
this
corner
book,
and
most
there's a
likely.
full portrait of a full nude portrait where so it's a nude portrait of Joe Bob
Covered
where
in a
his-
bear
his-
skin.
His head goes to 2 bodies. One is a naked man wearing a bear skin, and then on the left is a goat, and the head connects to both of them. And
What are you talking
this,
See, I thought you were going
It's
to
on
go with
page
it. It
59.
attaches to a lion and to a lamb, for he is
and
both
to a
the
witch,
lion and the lamb, and to a wardrobe.
to a witch, and to a wardrobe. Exactly.
But
what I
no,
was
this
thinking.
feels very like. So, do we think if this was written today, do we think Marco would be like Andrew Tate pilled? Do we think like that, or like Mr.
Dude, it would be
Beast
Elon
pilled?
Musk.
Elon Musk, you
Wouldn't
think?
it'd be Elon Musk.
He's that
it'd
rich,
totally
yeah.
be. But the thing that's annoying is like, I'm like Elon Musk is like so much more what Marco thinks Joe Bob is than what Joe Bob actually is.
I would argue that Joe Bob is so much more what Elon Musk thinks he is than what Elon Musk thinks he
That's
is.
a
Like,
fair point,
I
that's a fair
think
point.
Joe Bob, like, as
You
we'll
don't
come
see
to
Joe
know.
Bob Finestre releasing the Cybertruck.
You're not wrong, but as we'll come to know, Joe Bob Finestra came upon these technological breakthroughs.
Ill God.
Well, like, if he didn't
Kind
come
of like it.
upon them
Or not,
honestly, even if he didn't come upon them honestly, he's sort of
He
taking
made a
credit.
Faustian bargain.
He's sort of taking credit for somebody else's work, but he didn't like gut their company and then leave. You know what I mean? And take all the credit. You know what I mean? Like he made an agreement to get the tech, and now he is the link to that tech. I don't want to say too much.
So Marco loves this rich guy and like idolizes him because Marco has now gone beyond just wanting to be a celebrity and famous and an art kid or like an actor.
He wants anything that
actually-
gets him the big bucks.
He really just wants the big
Yeah,
bucks.
why-
in this book, which I don't think is totally him, but that's what we're getting from him right now.
So
and I get that.
I had this I forget where I made this note, but it's not this chapter, but it does make me think Marco, in terms of how he appears in other people's books, is so different than the Marco. Like, he's so sad when you're in his narration, but he's so over the top. And I think that's by design because he's kind of, even book 15 was about him being like a comic, his pressure to be a comic relief character.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk about wanting to be rich the whole time throughout his books. It
No,
is
I
He
kind
made-
of think
he
it's
made-
just a bit.
Yeah.
He made early references, like early in the series, he made a lot of like, this is going to get us on Letterman. We're going to be rich and I'm going to be surrounded by models kind of comments. So like, it's not totally not in keeping with him as a character, but
Yeah.
it's not a bit we've seen in a while. And it doesn't feel like a very like genuine, like deep seated thing for him. It feels like one of those like fluff
It does seem
pieces he does.
performative.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like he's performing.
Yeah.
Which this whole book is about performing. Let's
is.
just get that out of the way right now. Like that.
It's about the pressure to perform.
Book
Yeah.
is about as a leader or as a janitor, which we will get to so soon.
Yeah.
So
The
soon.
pressures of being a custodial worker as a bear.
Yeah. One last thing before we move on from this, though. I just want to say that the conversation between Jake and Cassie, it's more like a moment. I guess the conversation I'm thinking of is actually later. But just
little
that,
bit
like,
later,
Cassie showing up and just kind of hugging Jake, they have a very sweet relationship.
All throughout this book, she's really showing up for him. And it's, and like, not to say she's not placing her own pressures on him sometimes, but like, she is thinking of Jake and his emotional state more than anybody else in this book. And she is concerned for him, and it shows.
Yeah.
I just thought of the stupidest joke. We need to move on.
Okay.
I'm never going to say it out loud.
Chapter 11.
Right.
Chapter 11?
Chapter
10. Sorry.
10.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. Right.
Joke so stupid, we skipped a chapter.
The gang discusses the best way to infiltrate the command center, given that it's the middle of the workday. Rachel suggests starting a fire, but Jake says absolutely not. These are nice, normal people. Although, he says, they could always become these nice, normal people, though Jake isn't sure if he's okay with this idea as soon as he voices it.
Oh, just say it explicitly. They want to morph people.
Yes. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't say that. Yes, they want to morph the employees at the in the command center. Cassie.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right. Cassie immediately objects as well. Marco says it's probably immoral, but also brilliant. While Axe adds that it makes sense. Humans are the animals that are native to this environment. And then we get a whole aside
Axe.
here where, was it Rachel? Really hates this idea that him calling humans animals or something like that.
She doesn't love that.
Yeah. Marco points out.
She finds it unbearable.
Marco points out that Axe's human morph uses their combined DNA. How is this plan any different? Because we consented, Cassie says. Who cares, Rachel says, as long as it works. Plus, they wouldn't be taking over any minds. They'd simply be using the DNA of the humans who work there. Jake ultimately says, no, they can't morph into other humans without consent. Instead, Marco and Axe will sneak into the command center to hack the computers while the rest of the Animorphs create a distraction.
Put on a show!
So there's a lot going on here. The Rachel thing you mentioned, when Axe says humans are the animals that are native to this particular environment, Rachel says, we like to think of ourselves as more than animals, to which Axe responds, why? And she says, I don't know, we just do, or at least the best animals around. And Axe says, how do you define best? And Marco tries to cut it off by saying we were the only animals to create TV shows. But then also sides with Axe by bringing up the Axe morph and asking how that's different. And like Cassie bringing the consent into it, which is a theme we've seen with her. So I like that it gets to be Cassie bringing that up and it seems consistent.
Yep.
I do sort of side with Rachel. Like when they get into talking about it, Cassie and Jake sort of take this stance that it's somehow as bad as what the Yeerks are doing. And Rachel says, we aren't taking over their minds. We'd simply be using their DNA, no different from any other animal. And like, I really do personally, like, as much as I do think the consent issue is sort of is definitely a thing. I don't see why they're equating it as bad. Like,
It's true.
I think you can say we don't want to cross this line without saying it's equal to what the Yeerks are doing. Like, I think there's a middle ground there where you're like, we only want to do that as a last resort. And also, Cassie technically had Rachel's permission to morph her at the end of book 12.
How did that work? Because I can't remember it for the life of me.
So the plan was if Rachel were to suddenly start morphing a crocodile and couldn't control it and needed to get out of there, in order to cover up the fact that Rachel had left, Cassie was going to morph Rachel and pretend to be her. But that didn't happen that way. What happened is, we're not sure. I guess someone was looking for Rachel, and Rachel was maybe not quite done burping she had fully burped the croc.
It's verified that they had, like, that's in the book. I can't remember.
They talked about it, yes. They talked about it, that's how she, she acquired her DNA for a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know that they were in a worst case scenario when she chose to morph her, because Rachel was coming around the corner fully Rachel and dressed. I don't know when and why Cassie decided to do that morph. And, Rachel didn't seem pissed about it in particular, but, I don't know. It seemed like Cassie jumped the gun on that morph a little bit and doesn't consider it. But again, it would come back to Cassie saying Rachel consented to giving her that morph, so she had permission to use it. But I don't know, the argument, the fact that the argument is coming from the only human to have done a human morph feels a little weird.
Can I present a theory?
Okay.
Cassie was not hugging Jake to comfort him. She's just acquiring his DNA.
Yo, dude.
I would do that to my partner all the time to put them in a trance, just to shut them out.
Oh, she comforted him. Yeah.
But B, it would calm them down. Imagine if someone could put their hand on you. It's like the character in I Was a Teenage Exocolonist that has this ability, and it's like you don't understand it. It's like they touch you. Oh, there is a character that has an ability that's like it touches you and it calms you down, and it's like
so
that'd be great.
So Eddie, that is insane.
Why?
And well, I'm just saying that is totally plausible. And can you find other instances of Cassie touching the other Animorphs surreptitiously to acquire their morphs? Because I'm wondering, do you think that'll pay off?
I mean, the question is actually, do any of them that hug each other have, like, when you hug your parents, are you? Well,
you have to consciously do it. You have to consciously do it.
Oh, that's true.
This brings up a different question, though, that I'm not sure I asked back in book 4 when we got the Axe human morph, when you took all their little bits of DNA. Can it only be done with members of the same species? Or could we have been morphing hybrids this whole time?
What? Because you morph other species all
Axe
the time.
morphs a combination of human DNA.
Oh, you want an actual centaur.
But it might not work that simply, right? Like if you mix their DNA, it might produce a non-viable creature.
Yeah, one would imagine.
But also, he hasn't really taught them how to do it.
If you mix human DNA, you might create a non-viable.
He mentions Cassie being like an estrine and like better at morphing than he is, but he has not taught them this ability to like mix DNA of morphs, and they have not talked about it at all. Really.
I think we're getting.
Also, they should acquire Chapman's DNA. They should just
agree.
Yes.
That should fucking happen. They just need to like hit him over the head with something and just get his DNA super quick, and then the problem's solved.
If you acquired Mr. and Mrs. Chapman, could you morph Melissa?
But would you be able to get the dead eyes right? Would you be able to get them?
No one could get the dead eyes right.
No one could nail those dead eyes like Melissa.
Maybe
that takes experience.
Master of Light, could paint those dead eyes.
I actually like that they've managed to just include a whole chapter where they're just having like a moral discussion about.
Yeah, they just have a moral discussion. Which Taco Bell makes me question a lot of my morals. So, like, you know.
Well, yeah, and after you eat it, you're tumbly so grumbly that you're like, I'll do anything to feel better.
Exactly.
Anything. But it really feels like there is this consistent slope towards the, like, you know, when we got into this and we were reading on Animorphs Twitter and Animorphs subreddits or whatever about the war crimes that they committed, it's like, this has been building for a while. The questions have always been there, but now, like, they're in front of our children. And we need to know if our children are going to do the right
War
thing.
crimes are like the event horizon of Animorphs, and we're watching the children slowly get spaghettified. Like
Exactly.
In more ways
Chapter
than
10?
one, we've been watching them get spaghettified.
Well, except for Marco, who got Marco-ronied.
Yeah.
Okay, chapter 11. It's my turn to read?
Yes.
Is that
I
true?
said chapter 10.
Oh, it's chapter 11.
It's
finally.
chapter
Here
11.
we go. Jake, Rachel, Cassie, and Tobias are 4 of the Animorphs, morphing into the most terrifying forms. Oh, shit. So we're in the WA. We're
making a distraction. That's what we're doing. We're going to create a diversion.
I just needed to remind myself, we're in the WA.
We got, our discussion got a little sidetracked, but we're making a distraction while Marco and Axe do computer things.
Exactly. So Jake, Rachel, Cassie, and Tobias, you know, the fun ones, morph into their most terrifying forms. Jake is a tiger, Rachel is a grizzly, Cassie is a skunk, Tobias is a hawk. Well, that's actually not a morph for Tobias.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're going to let that one slide, Ed.
Okay.
To create a very silly distraction while Marco and Axe fetch the necessary information from the computers.
No, just from computers.
From
computers in general.
Yeah.
Did I say from the computers?
Yeah.
That's really old-timey. That's really bizarre.
No,
I did not mean to say that.
I honestly think it's more accurate than from computers.
Yes, I agree. I was making fun of myself.
It's like from the computers in the mainframe instead of just from generic computers. Anyway.
While those two boys are sneaking...
Those two boys.
I don't know why
always
your
sneaking
voice,
around
when I
command
read it-
centers.
Yeah, okay. While those two boys are sneaking around the command center, Rachel, the bear, Jake, the tiger, pretend to do janitorial work, high up in an observation window overlooking the office, mopping and generating plenty of distracting noise. The employees just stare, slackjaw, giving Marco and Axe plenty of time to complete their end of the mission. 2 armed security guards arrive to investigate the other 4 in their animal morphs. Somehow this is very confusing. One is immediately scared off, one of the armed guards. The other flees once Cassie in skunk morph sprays him with her tail. Thank you for clarifying. Not like maced him in the face.
Actually,
or something.
it's under her tail that she sprays him with, but that's neither here nor there.
No, I meant anyway, the gang regroups in the lobby just as a SWAT team arrives at the building. Despite everything going as planned, Marco seems sad. He confesses...
Just say Morrow.
Morrow.
Marxo.
Groucho Marxo. He confesses that he had a little extra time, so he looked up the identity of his online girlfriend just out of curiosity. It turns out that she's in fact a 73-year-old retired postal worker.
This book
One of
did
my
Catfish
least
before it was Catfish.
Yeah. But also, don't blow up Party Girl's fucking vibe.
I was going to ask, do we think it's Party Girl or do we think it's Pretty Girl?
Actually, yeah, you're right. It's highly problematic. You're totally right.
Well,
about
but here's,
that.
okay,
But
so
Marco,
important question. It is PRTY Girl 882. Or is that 802? I can't tell in your phone.
1802.
802,
It's
yeah.
which is when she was born.
Do we think it's Party Girl or Pretty Girl?
Ooh, good.
PRTY Girl. Yeah. I don't know. I will say, in my
Party
memory...
Girl is Occam's razor?
PERTY, Party Girl.
Party Girl. In my memory...
Party Girl, yeah.
This was outed as being a man. And they do not technically say that, and I do want to give them the credit for not going for like a gay joke or something like that. It was just that this was not who he thought he was talking to, and it was like, so it gave you the stranger danger and like, don't believe everything you see online, but it wasn't like as awful as it could have been.
In Party Girl 1802's defense, we have no confirmation that she knows anything about Marco. Marco has been known to imitate people online. Marco imitated Cassie.
Yeah, he's selling himself as a 45-year-old entrepreneur. Like, who thinks he's dating a 21-year-old girl. We're all lying here, Marco.
Party Girl's just looking for love in all our own places.
No. But I do want to say, I think that someone of that age naming themselves Party Girl,
it's Pretty Girl. Let's be honest, it's Pretty Girl.
Whichever one it is. Whichever one it is.
Pretty Girl or Party Girl, I think is someone probably trying to pass themselves off.
How do we know it's not just her granddaughter? She's just paying for the internet. How do we know? Like, we don't know.
I'm just a little concerned for Marco. I'm glad you two have so much faith in this person.
No, I think it's best. I mean, listen, I watch a lot of Catfish. I do. I've seen almost every episode of Catfish that's ever been produced and the original movie.
Now, I don't remember if I had an online boyfriend, but I definitely was talking to people of all kinds of ages and probably to people I thought were my age. Some of them probably weren't. Like, I feel like
pretending to be a kid is bad.
I will say that,
you just have no confirmation. Party Girl did
and I guess
that,
I'll put like a small trigger warning on this for like inappropriate communication, but nothing bad happened. But like a guy who was telling me he was 20 when I was openly 10 on a Harry Potter roleplay forum asked to be my boyfriend.
See, that's the thing.
And he sent a picture, but it was a group picture. And this is a classic tactic, just for anyone wondering, to send a group picture and lie about which person in the picture you are, to then reveal later that like, well, I'm actually not the person in the picture I told you. I'm actually older and I'm this person.
Yikes,
I did say yes. And then the next morning I got on and I was like, I'm very sorry. No one had ever asked me to be their girlfriend before, and I was very flattered. So I said yes, but I don't really think this is appropriate. Also, you live in Australia. And he was like, we could send pictures to each other. And I was like, I literally, I didn't even think it was creepy though. I continued to interact with him. I was like, I just really don't think that that's something we should do. And he was like, okay. And like, I do, looking back, he definitely tried to continue pushing that, but I just like brushed him off, and I like totally, and I think I told our parents about it, and they were like,
Miranda.
well, she said no. Like, I guess it's like.
And yeah, good for telling our parents.
You had
too.
a lot of
That's really healthy.
foresight in that situation in ways that I certainly would not have had.
It was a very weird situation, like to look back on as an adult and be like, wow, that was even more inappropriate than I felt like it was at the time. Like,
Yeah, totally,
even if he was actually only 20, which he probably wasn't. Like,
it's still bad. That's horrible. It can't be stated enough. That is insane.
be careful on the internet, folks. Insane. Be careful on the internet.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry, but I do actually have a small agenda to push in this chapter. Can we just talk?
No, for sure.
Let's just talk.
Oh,
I just want us to
we keep
our
forgetting
turtle.
about the
I
book.
want us to put our turtlenecks on. I want us to put our black berets on. I want us to be like really artsy. We're all scene partners here. And what I would like to explore is like, there's a few details about this distraction that I find really compelling. First of all, they set up the whole thing with, we're going to get Tobias's shoes later. Now, I don't know what that means,
it's a great
but let's
start.
just put a pin in that. We have, for our distraction, we have a bear that is
Grizzly
Rachel.
bear.
Grizzly bear with a mop, mopping the floor.
Which she thinks is undignified.
Yes, which she thinks is undignified. Now we have Jake as a tiger accompanying the bear. Now, let's start there. Miranda, Eddie, tell me what that means to you.
Well, the
What
tiger is specifically holding the bucket of water.
Right.
For the mop. For the mop.
Great. Thank you.
So-
Which is Aquarius, right? Pouring the
the water bear, yeah.
Yeah, the water bear.
It's an air sign, but it's the water bear.
Right.
So this is a classic improv exercise. If you've ever been to theater camp, anything like that, they will have you
Zip, zap, zap.
one by one create a machine, and you will have to come up with a movement and a noise, and then that you will add on to the machine, and then when it is done, you will all move and make your noise as one, and you decide sort of on this zany machine what each piece does. And I really think that's where this came from. So Rachel's the mopper, Jake's the water holder,
So you're
Tobias
seeing a
is
Rube
the
Goldberg
alarm.
machine.
Yeah,
Right. Yes,
Tobias is
yes.
warning people that they're coming, like Marty in I guess I don't know if his name's Marty anywhere else, but like one of those like supermarket robots that like goes around and
Yes.
marks spills and is like warning, warning, like he's warning you that they're coming. So for me, this all works. This all reads. Who else
what
is
is
there?
Cassie
Is
doing?
Axe there?
Eddie.
Cassie.
What is Cassie doing? She's a skunk.
Right.
Yes.
So she's making the mess and they're cleaning it up.
Yeah.
So Eddie, yeah, what do you get from this?
Well, I think that what Miranda's saying makes sense because that's telling us that the Animorphs are in the process of learning how to work
their
as a
roles
system and
in
their
the
roles.
team.
And
You guys
Cassie,
are geniuses.
Cassie has not found her place
She
yet.
hasn't quite found her spot yet. She's usually
And in
emotional support, which makes sense. It's hard to physically manifest emotional support. You know what I mean?
But in this setting where, like, oh my God, you guys are so smart because it's like everybody else has a hard skill and she has soft skills. And sometimes those soft skills are like telling Jake he needs to pay attention to his emotions, which is kind of just stinking up the place in a way. Like it's metaphorically
or telling
gumming
people
up the
that
works.
we don't need no stinking badges and having them believe us.
Yeah.
That's
And
true. That's true.
Cassie, they're in this very corporate setting, and I think soft skills are also the hardest to represent on the resume. They're the
You
hardest
are
to sell.
so
Very
right
true.
about that.
And
you
Rachel
are so
thinks
right
that
about
she's
that.
above mopping.
That's true. And
Next
And they're at a
actually,
high placement above the other workers. While
That's
Marco
right.
and
It
Axe...
is carpeted.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going now. So what's the significance of that? Does that mean that it is more the play within the play and that their actions bespeak labor, but it's important to know they're not doing labor?
I
or what,
think
like,
it represents the futility of trying to take what are considered lower level skills into higher level management despite their necessity.
All right. Eddie, what do you
And I
got?
think it's Rachel thinks that she's above this role, and yet she does it, and she's doing it in a place where it's totally unnecessary. I think it's telling us something about what Rachel thinks are her useful skills and where she's deploying.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Which is kind of related to what Miranda was saying about deployment of skills in unnecessary spaces. Well, thank you for
What
coming
about Marco
on.
and Axe? What does this tell us about them?
Who cares?
They're hacking computers.
They're sneaky boys.
They're sneaky boys.
Are they
Sneaky boys strike again.
who? I want that spin-off series. Especially if it's kind
Marco
of...
and Axe, the sneaky boys. It's like the Hardy Boys, but they actually just steal shit.
Or what was that?
Yeah.
Dead Boy Detective Society or something like Dead Boy
Oh, yeah, I
Detectives?
never watched that.
Yeah.
I never
That was a
watched
spinoff of Sandman?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
There's one last detail that I think is relevant because I just think it's worth hitting that as they're leaving, because in this same chapter, they actually leave the.
Oh, yeah, they
corporate-
demorph and leave.
And they leave barefoot and underdressed. In
Why
like,
don't
you
they
know,
put their
in
shoes back on?
I don't know
they didn't have
because they sure
time.
freaking have them, and they walk right out past the SWAT team, and the SWAT team said, "Do you know anything about this bear?" And they go, "Bear? You're talking silly, gunman." And then they walk right on by.
What a silly thing to say.
This is the first time that the SWAT team has arrived at a scene like this, right? In the
Well, who
series.
do you
That's
call for a
actually true.
bear?
Right. And I think actually the cops haven't shown up that many times.
No, but you're
The
actually
cops showed
totally
up book
right.
1 asking about people setting off fireworks, but those were years.
But in book one, they're folksy small town cops who are like, this is militarized. There is like this interesting.
This is when
And we
Right.
saw the
Stage out.
military in book 14, but this is like the cops.
Oh, you're right. And I think the police
And-
showed up in Megamorphs when the Valik was attacking
Oh, yeah.
the house that Rachel was in. They surrounded the
Yeah,
house.
and the car accident on the
Yes.
on the freeway when she didn't know who she was.
That was an exciting book.
And not only are we pre 9/11, but we're pre Columbine here.
Jesus.
Just like we're talking about cops in a
This is just a
different era.
different world.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain.
Not that SWAT teams were a part of that, but just that it's like we're already talking about that level. Okay. I'm not smart
Chapter
enough
12,
to have
chapter
that
12.
conversation. Chapter 12.
I think it's my turn.
Yep.
The
Okay.
gang reviews the list of names they've acquired, identifying everyone they've encountered in the chat room. Most of them appeared to be everyday people, except for one. Joe Bob Finestra himself had been in the chat. The gang
What?
returns to the airport and prepares for the flight back home. They plan to morph into flies again. Jake is terrified by this plan, but he feels that he cannot share that terror with anyone else. He needs to pretend that everything is fine. Cassie, of course, can see right through Jake. She tries to protect him, suggesting that they try another morph for the journey home just because it might be fun. But no one wants to change the plan at this point. Jake tells Cassie not to worry about it. Morphing flies is the best plan. Cassie pulls Jake aside. She is frustrated with Jake. Why does he feel like he has to prove how tough he is to the group? If he's scared, can't he just say so? It would be one thing if Jake was letting an irrational fear control him, but he nearly died in his fly morph. Isn't he allowed to be a human being like everyone else? Jake says no, actually. They made him the leader of this group, and so he isn't allowed to express fear like the others. Sure, he might be scared all the time, but Jake believes he's not allowed to show it. If he gives in to fear, that gives the others permission to give in to fear themselves. Jake believes that the Animorphs expect him to act the way they'd like to be themselves. You didn't have themselves twice. I did because I read it with the wrong cadence. Oh well. We didn't do you any favor when we made you the leader, did we? Cassie says. We did pick the right person, though. She tells Jake that even generals and presidents must have friends with whom they are honest about how they feel. Jake admits that he wants to just break down crying at this moment. He also really wants to hug Cassie, but he doesn't do either.
Poor
So
Jake.
admits poor Jake.
Poor Jake.
He doesn't admit that out loud, does he?
No, just Jake admits in his narration, so he
Yes, to
admits
the
to the
reader.
reader.
Yeah.
Okay.
He doesn't say, Cassie, I really want to hug you right now, but I'm not going to.
Despite the tone of this chapter, Rachel and Marco do have a very cute, very on-brand interaction for them at the beginning that's very lighthearted, which I think does do a good job of, like, not undercutting, but underscoring, like, the fact that Jake is not being public with his battle and that genuinely Cassie seems to be the only one who notices that it's happening.
Yeah, you're totally right about that.
Yeah, and I think that's actually what I missed when I brought up the Taco Bell bit earlier. There's a whole thing there where Axe is getting really into drinking the hot sauce, I think. And
they get kicked out and they're like, tell your friend he can buy Tabasco at the grocery store.
And I actually think the book's just trying to do, and also the silly scene with the mops and the bears and the tigers. I actually think the book's trying to like tone reset because Jake getting smushed and then all of this that he struggles with, like with his anxiety about being a leader, is so it's not the heaviest thing we've read in the series, but it's pretty intense. And I think they're trying to be like, fun. These are fun books too.
See, these are kids' books. Yeah. These are fun. We're having fun. Bear with them up.
What's also crazy to me, and this didn't even occur to me when I was doing my notes, but like we're talking about a book that is just purely a resonance of book 11. This is our first Jake book since book 11. And so book 11, if we're talking about like, if we were to ever reread this, if we're like 60 and we do this again, what I would propose is reading all of Jake's books in a row, all of Rachel's books in a row.
That'd be really interesting.
Because
Season 2 of Anidorks, that's what we'll do.
Season 2, there you go. But the amount of time that has passed between book 11 and book 16 experientially for Jake, like we've been with him along the way, but there is, as narrator, almost an insane immediacy. Because us as readers, we've done the whole Elfangor thing. We did Andalite Chronicles. We did all this other stuff before getting back to Jake. But for Jake, like, his last book was the nightmare version of this, and then this is the nightmare made real. Yeah. Like, that's what we're talking about.
Because book 11 was how his choices as leader can have negative impacts, and then getting to undo them all at the end.
Yeah, they gave him a sandbox. They gave him the Saria Rip, which reversed time or gave him, like, an entry point back.
Right, allowed him to sort of, like, redo causality. Yeah, like... Yeah. But,
thank you for explaining that. Yeah, that's relevant. I said it as though all of our listeners just finished book 11.
But like they did prime us for this really well in book 11, I think, because like we got a lot of time to sit with Jake and what those feelings meant. And in this book, there's a lot more action. And so having the knowledge of how Jake feels about those things, even though 11 made him slightly more committed to being, you know, quote unquote, okay with being the person who makes decisions, we have that background and they don't have to go through it every decision in this book and be like, this is what he's thinking inside, because we know how he's feeling inside.
And what you're totally right about that. And that is exactly right. But it also hits so hard that when some of this stuff starts happening again, it's trauma for Jake. Yeah. It's not just a fear. It's something Jake has already lived through. Marco's going to throw some barbs in a couple chapters that really hurt Jake. And it's something he had to live through while he was watching Rachel die once before.
And as far as we know, like, we actually have no idea how much of that he ever told them.
Right.
Presumably, we have no idea how much about that they know.
Nothing.
As far as we know, he told Axe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't mean to get so... I actually, like, if we're talking about this chapter, like, one of the things that I want to know is, like, when Jake's describing... What do you guys, in reading this chapter, what do you think the book believes being a leader is in this moment? Right? Because, like, we have the whole series, and we already know that the book is stringing us along and building an argument across 54 main series books and 10 side series. But what do you think this speech from Jake and this rebuttal from this very, very, very nuanced rebuttal from Cassie, what do you think it's saying to us right now? Like,
yeah, well, I think that, I actually think, just like before when they were talking about what the right thing to do with the morphs was, morphing the employees of WA. I think I couldn't remember what it stood for. I just remembered WA. I think that they do enjoy just using this group of kids to explore different sides. I do think Jake's gets more. I think the book thinks that Cassie's right, but I think Cassie's setting up what Jake has to wrestle with over the course of the book. So I think the book actually believes what Cassie's saying, but it also takes really seriously the pressure that Jake feels. Like, regardless of whether or not Cassie's right, Jake's living with that pressure to not show how he really feels. Yeah. And I don't think Jake's completely, I think there is a lot of usefulness that comes, even though it's unsustainable and bad for Jake, and he's 12, I think there's a lot of usefulness that's come out of Jake model. I think he's right that him not showing fear has probably at sometimes helped the others feel a little bit less afraid, which is confusing. I don't know.
It is.
No, I totally agree with you, and my take is like pretty similar, and I agree, Chris, that it's like super nuanced and impressively nuanced for the book, and that they've really done a lot of groundwork laying throughout the series to make me feel this way. But like, I feel like they are saying, yes, a leader sometimes has to sacrifice part of themselves for the greater good, and that it will be painful and hard for them and be sort of a detriment to them that they took this on. Cassie mentions that everybody has to have someone who knows how they feel, and I think that her doing that, and the books continue to support this idea that having people to keep you grounded so you don't get carried away. Like, someone has to be there to make sure that you're thinking about things, like you're thinking about the moral implications that maybe you personally hadn't considered before then. And I also think the book is making an argument that the type of person who wouldn't be affected by that is not the type of person you want to be your leader. They're making the argument that it's precisely because Jake is sensitive to these things and is sensitive to listening to everybody else and is also sensitive to how his decisions affect everybody. That's what makes him able to make the best decisions. But like you said, Eddie, that's not sustainable. But there's this, they don't really show it, I guess. I mean, Visser 3 is sort of an example of a person in power who doesn't think about the effects that his decisions have on people. And for him personally, mental health-wise, that's totally sustainable. He's not going to have a problem. But maybe that's not who you want. Dancers. Yeah, maybe that's not who you want leading you.
Yeah. No, that's really well said. And I think I think something that really hit me is like Cassie, like you were saying, provides both of you were saying this, that she provides this counterbalance to like strength, pretending that strength is the only thing and not having the depth and also the emotionality and the acknowledgement thereof. So what I also find interesting is her acceptance of Jake's experience in the moment is also powerful. Just from Cassie, like she doesn't invalidate. She's present. She's asking the question. But she doesn't. Unlike another conversation in this book where Cassie and Jake have a disagreement, this is a situation where Cassie shows a profound amount of acceptance to what the position that Jake is in, which is like, it's remarkable. Yeah.
I feel like the easy way to do this bit with Jake here would be to set him up, like the book setting him up to be, where like you're reading what he's saying and then you're thinking, let's see how that goes for you, Jake. But I actually think he's pretty convincing here. And I think the book will prove Cassie's point. Like, we will see Jake crack, to jump ahead like a few chapters, in a way that I thought was like pretty. I really felt for Jake this book, and it wasn't fun to watch, and it's not. But
no, it wasn't.
I think it would be easy to say for him to just completely write Cassie off and then just say something that sounded kind of dumb, like, "Oh no, feelings are for losers" or something like. But no, he says something that actually is also has some truth to it, and I thought that was just like what we've been saying. I think this series has really interesting thoughts about leadership that I was not expecting. I think Jake, even though we made fun of him in the beginning, he's actually a really interesting leader character.
Yeah, because we made fun of him for being, you know, the stereotypical leader, but then they decided to actually go into that in the books and like what it looks like behind that mask. And I'm like, I'm super grateful for it because it makes him a really interesting character, actually.
Yeah. He also had the unfun task of going first at an improv workshop.
Exposition. Yeah,
he had
his whole first book wasn't really his book.
Exactly. Yeah. And we really didn't get him until later.
6 probably.
Is 6?
And we really did start to like him in 6. He gets yeerked, and we're like, this is an interesting character. This is a cool dude.
As I keep saying, as a yeerked person, that representation mattered to me.
Yeah. They never show you with complexity. You are not just the yeerk, you're the yeerk and the controller. And
I'm 2 people.
Yeah.
Let's round it out. Let's do chapter 13.
Let's finish it up, yeah.
Chapter 13. Jake makes it home to his family. He's exhausted, but he can't stop thinking about the mission. Back when they were all in the chat room, before they knew that Fighty 777 was Joe Bob Finestra, they thought that he might be someone truly resisting the Yeerk invasion. Now that the Animorphs know who he is, however, they're a little more suspicious. After all, Joe Bob Finestra also knows the identities of everyone in that chat room. Sure, being able to access that level of information might also be how Joe Bob Finestra discovered the Yeerk invasion in the first place. But that would also make him a prime target for the Yeerks. He could already be a controller using the website to target enemies of the Yeerks. Jake knows that he has no time to rest. He should go straight to Marco's to begin researching Finestra and his mansion. He lives nearby, after all, and it was already Saturday evening. The weekend was almost over. But then Jake decides to just be a normal kid for the night instead. Oh. He decides to stay home and have dinner with his parents and his brother. While his mom makes salmon, Jake brings his homework downstairs to finish while watching a boxing match with his dad. With his dad. With his dad.
My mom is dad.
The 4 of them eat dinner together. Jake wants to believe it's real, that it's just another normal night with his family like he used to have. But he can't stop thinking about the fact that his brother is actually a Yeerk controller and recalling how he nearly died that morning, smeared on the ceiling of a plane. He's angry, Jake tells us. Mostly what people want is to be left alone, Jake says. They just want to sit down and have a nice dinner and tell boring stories and tell jokes they've told a dozen times before.
For real?
But there's always someone for whom boring everyday life isn't enough, Jake says, and that's when the killing starts. That was true for humans even before the Yeerk invasion. What is the matter with people that they don't know all that really counts is that people who love each other be able to be together, live in peace, learn, work, tell boring stories and dumb jokes. What do they think they're going to get that's better than that? Jake's mom asks what he's thinking about. After all, he's being very quiet at the dinner table. Jake tells her he'd like to do this more often, have dinner together. I hope nothing ever happens to us, he tells his family. I hope we'll always be together. Tom teases Jake in exactly the way that he would have before he was yeerked. The Yeerk really does a perfect imitation of Jake's brother. And so Jake laughs the way he always would have, all the while imagining the day that he'll tear the Yeerk out of his brother's head and destroy it for good. This chapter is crazy. It's intense.
It's really good. And so, like, one of the first things he says is, you never really get past the fear. Fear eats a little hole in you, like rust in the fender of a car. You fill the hole up with putty and sand it smooth and paint over it so no one else can see it. But it's never really as good as new. And to that I have to say, fuck you, Jake. I am trying my best. I am doing everything I can.
Wow.
If I could go out and buy a new model of me, I would.
Yeah. It's actually... I had to include direct quotes in here because there were parts that were so good that I just wanted to put them in the description. And I still missed one.
Absolutely.
And because I actually think this is... I was just thinking, going over like all of these moments that were really good, even like the writing and how much I think it conveys the stuff, like this idea of sitting down, seemingly having a normal dinner with your family, all the while Jake has a secret about how he's an Animorph and he's fighting the Yeerks and his brother is actually a controller, and he also just almost died this morning, but he has to pretend that didn't happen. That's like a lot of the main thematic and emotional resonances in the series in this chapter. It's a really good chapter.
Yeah.
It is.
I hope we'll always be together is like the cop 3 days from retirement going out for his last patrol. That is the most the biggest death flag I've ever seen. This family is not coming through it unscathed.
It is.
No. That's priming us for when he frees Tom and they all have normal dinner together in the end. So that we think of this moment. Yeah. And still covered in blood from the battle. They're like, let's have salmon. The boxing. They remembered the boxing. Remember when
they still like boxing.
Jake's dad invited his two friends from pickleball over
That's
to
right.
watch
It wasn't
the boxing
pickleball,
match.
was it?
I know. I just wanted to say pickleball.
I think it was just friends from work.
Yeah.
I have to say, I have nothing deep to say about it. I feel like you guys already hit it. Maybe I'm as trashed as Jake was on tiramisu. I don't mean to but
I love the teachable moment about tiramisu. Oh, by the way, tiramisu is an Italian
There's
dessert.
alcohol in it, yeah.
This chapter actually did read like a different book almost. Like it had a soundtrack, it had a flow, and down to him eventually choosing not to do any of his homework for the Animorphs.
Choosing not to. He was supposed to do recon on Joe Bob's mansion.
Yeah.
But then he falls into it, His dad tells him Showtime's re-showing a pay-per-view fight. And
how often does that even happen to me? I mean, those are the moments of life. It is so easy for me. I think I get caught up in everything like it's an Animorphs level pursuit. And then you walk downstairs or if I'm at home, if I'm visiting home, Dad'll be like, this movie's on, blah, 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 watch. If I'm
you have
here,
to watch
I'll
Secretariat with Dad if it's on.
Exactly. If I walk downstairs here, my housemate might be like, hey, do you want to play a video game? It's those moments that just take you away from everything being a moment to moment urgent pursuit in the middle of him being deeply traumatized and taken away at. Yeah.
And he is the one that it's easy to imagine that Jake is the one that never lets him have a normal himself have a normal evening.
It's the crux of our musical.
Yeah.
Is that they're forcing him to go to a musical theater camp so that he'll finally relax.
Because
himself.
he thinks it's his job to be the one who's taking on the heavy stuff all the time. And tonight maybe he just wants to make the same old joke with his brother about how his mom shops at formerly Cool Fashions R Us.
I love that moment where, and I think it really, again, I think it really gets at something that the books are really interested in. They keep finding ways of having this kind of moment. The fact that Jake knows that his brother isn't his brother, but his brother is also a perfect copy in terms of the joke that he makes.
He's performing his brother so well.
And then Jake performs himself to go along with it, and probably even gets that little endorphin kick of, just joking around with my brother. He still gets that, probably. Yeah. Even though he knows none of it's real, that's just...
How ironic is it that, we just came out of a book from Marco that was all about performance, but yet this is the book about performance.
Yeah.
This is the book...
I had a note a little while ago when Jake has a line about scared but scared to tell people you're scared, go figure, or something like that. I'm like, well, if you would just fucking talk to Marco, you'd find out that this is a really normal feeling that you're all having.
Yeah. And I don't want
do anything to avoid therapy. I mean, whatever that is.
I know that Jake is our little straight boy of the series too, the only one in this whole series.
The way we count it, yeah.
And I don't want to put too much weight on this, but as someone who was a closeted teenager who tried to sit down and have wanted my family to think that everything was normal with me, and also everything kind of felt fake because I was like, no one really knows me. Like, that's a feeling that comes with that. Like, there's so many resonances throughout this series, but I think in this scene, like, I know that, like, that's something I remember is, like, going to holiday dinners and just trying to pass, like, everything was normal for the night.
Yeah.
Like, no one asked me about whether I have a girlfriend. I'm going to deflect the questions. And Jake has to do that in this meal. Like, and they all have to do that throughout the series. But I just think there's, like, a lot of potent stuff.
There's almost like a way. Well, I cut you off. I'm
no,
sorry. Go ahead.
I think that's true for lots of experiences while you're a teenager, but like that's just one resonance that I think feels like it comes out really strong.
I do see this one for you though, and I that's what. No, I mean that. Okay. I mean that. There's a way. No. I see you as straight.
I think you're straight, Eddie. No, I'm just kidding.
I think what I'm saying is like the invitation to normalcy, like my experience at Miranda and Mai's house, I always felt out of it or offbeat. But I also respect that like something Jake provides as an anchor for this moment for you, and sharing that is like, I think you have the other thing. Your family like did have procedures and dinners and things that were more like balanced. And so I think in a weird way, like Marco isn't as clean version of this, and other Animorphs aren't as clean a version of this because like you were immersed in normalcy. You passed. Or maybe is
I would say like Jake, I wanted to be the perfect boy eating his Cheerios. Like
I would say even Cassie, who, because if you look at the Animorphs, Cassie and Jake are the two whose parents are still together. And so that provides a bigger sense of normalcy, I think, as opposed to like Rachel, who has to like throw in that she's going away to see her dad sometimes, or like things like that. Or Marco, who is describing like the experience of having an absence in his life. But even with Cassie's family, they seem like they're kind of a little bit weird. You know what I mean? Like they're both veterinarians. They opened this wildlife rehabilitation clinic. They're all kind of quirky people, which I think resonates a little bit more for me with sort of the world, the household that I grew up in, where it's like
big Baldy's vibes.
Yeah, gender roles were not really preconceived notions. There was not a lot of pressure or expectations. There's that. But like
it was always in the middle of
You're saying that just because Jake's mom was making the salmon while Jake's dad watched boxing. Like, surely there was something he could have done to help. Like,
but it's totally fine if that's how they like their life. Yeah, no, it's like there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm just saying, I think
Cheerios. What is it?
Jake's the Wheaties family.
The Wheaties, that's what it is.
Wheaties
they're
of the
very
night.
much presented that way, and Jake feels that way. And so it's interesting that they sort of have the most secrets, I feel like, in that both children in the family have a secret. One of the children thinks they have a secret from the other, and one of the children actually does have a secret. From the other.
Right.
Yeah,
it's like very complex.
Yeah. It's very, do you know the opening shot of Blue Velvet is like the perfect suburban home, and then the camera gets closer and closer to the grass.
Keep going, keep going.
And it looks like a perfect lawn, and then it zooms in even more on the lawn, and then you see like the ant colonies swarming, and like the ground is alive, like a jungle almost, and then you realize that what they're swarming is a human ear, like a severed human ear that's just laying in that perfect lawn.
Yes, because the first one is the crime scene.
Yeah,
I've never seen Blue Velvet.
Yeah, and
we should watch it when I come home
that's
next
Jake's
for Thanksgiving.
Household. Like, it looks like the perfect household, but there's all this decay and rot. I mean, his parents seem totally functional as far as we can tell, except that Jake's dad has
they're the
these
only
secret
ones who
rendezvous
don't know that something's fucked up.
Totally.
Yeah, but that's what they're going for with Jake's home life, I think. Like,
is a little bit Stepford Wives,
Yes, yeah.
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, Or at least until next time. See you soon.